tonight. We're the TransNamib team, the final one. We're going to tell you about the things we've learned over our past 2 months of TransNamib and our recommendations we made to the company. I'm Julia Cataldo.
I'm Madison Brown.
I'm Incredible.
I'm Natasha Levy. So first off, I want to start by giving you a project description. Before even coming to Namibia, during those few months that Joe talked about at the beginning, we were asked to understand the state of real Namibia and to think of understanding the internal communication practices of TransNamib and of external communication practices. So to do this, we started by researching global rail standards to understand what rail in vertical is like, and then we also researched rail in surrounding African countries. When we come to Namibia, we did real work to understand TransNamib rail, and then we also looked inside their company to understand what they did with their communication. So their communication practices, the positives and negatives there, and they analyzed all this information and what we can solve it, so we provide recommendations for improvement. So a little bit about our sponsor, TransNamib. TransNamib is a paralegal company which means they're owned by the government. In our project description, it was suggested to us that this could be a reason for them having been unchanging for the past 20 years. It was also thought that their lack of communication change could be another factor for this. Additionally, 90% of TransNamib's revenue comes from freight, and only 2% of the revenue comes from passenger services. And another fact about TransNamib is that their management travels quite frequently to most of the country. They do this to visit properties and train stations and any other establishments that TransNamib has. In addition to this, they have a passenger requirement by the government. So this means that even though the passenger service doesn't bring in revenue, they are forced to have it.
So before we can talk about how we survey the communication at TransNamib, it's important to understand a few central concepts. The first one is that of company culture, which in simple terms is the personality of a company. It's the company's mission, their needs, their values, and their goals as determined by the leadership of the company. The leadership sets it. Two very important aspects of the company culture are vertical and horizontal communication. Vertical communication is simply communication between different tiers of the hierarchy. So for example, if a locomotive mechanic talks to a supervisor or the supervisor speaks to upper management, that's a perfect example. The other type of communication is horizontal communication, which is communication between people on the same tier of the hierarchy. So if two mechanics are talking to one another while working on a locomotive and collaborating, that's another perfect example. These two things, if they're strong enough, lead to something called organizational identification. Organizational identification is the degree to which employees buy in to the company culture. So if an employee's needs, values, and goals line up with that of the company, that's strong organizational identification. This is important because if an employee identifies strongly with their organization, they tend to have higher morale, lower job turnover, and more productivity. So to understand how we looked at company culture, it's important to understand the model that we use, the competing values framework. As you can see, there's two axes splitting this into 4 distinct quadrants. The horizontal axis contrasts an internal focus with an external focus, and the vertical axis contrasts flexibility and spontaneity with stability. In the upper left-hand quadrant here, we have group culture, which is characterized by human development and teamwork. In the upper right-hand quadrant, we have developmental culture, which is characterized by constant change and innovation. In the bottom right-hand corner, we have rational culture, which is characterized by aggressive competition and a customer-focused marketing approach. And in the bottom left-hand corner, we have hierarchical culture, which is characterized by following the rules and doing things by the book.
So once we understood our project, the information generally that we had to collect and the model we were going to use, we had to go out and collect that information. Because we had two sort of separate projects, one that was intercompany and one that was for passengers, we split our methodology into 2 parts. For intercompany, we wanted to survey and interview the people within the company, sort of on every step of the ladder, from the CEO to the lowest level employee of the company, and compare, see how they felt about the company, see how they felt about the culture, organizational identification, and the communication. And then sort of separately, we examined the passengers. We went on the train, we made our own observations, and we also wanted to see how the regular riders of the train felt about the train and what they thought we were.
As far as our sample or the people we collected data from,
We interviewed 21 managers or supervisors at TransNamib from all the different departments. So that's anyone from a lower level manager to the executives in the company. We interviewed and surveyed them to collect information, as Julio said, as well as interviewing and surveying 21 ground level employees at TransNamib. So people from the locomotives yard and the marshalling yard at different stations and people like that. So in total, we ended up interviewing and surveying 42 employees at TransNamib to collect the data necessary for our project. And for the other half of our project, the passenger communication portion, we rode the trains, as Julio said, from Windhoek to Walvish Bay and back. And on those 2 rides, we ended up interviewing and surveying 28 passengers, which is how we collected data. And also, we had our own experience to collect data.
Our first findings come in the form of company culture. So one of the big reasons we looked at company culture was to determine if there's any sort of disconnect between how management has set it and how employees perceive it. So you can see on the graphs here, there's a green outline on each one. That's a balanced profile, so it's a perfectly balanced situation, which happens very, very rarely in reality. As you can see here, TransNamib has a slightly hierarchical culture, and it lacks a developmental culture. However, the most important part about this is that the shapes are almost identical. This means that the managers perceive the company culture to be exactly the same as the employees perceive it, which is an indicator of good communication right off the bat.
So some further findings from the company. First one is organizational identification. As Nick said before, organizational identification leads straight into company culture, and it means that there's generally good communication. It also means that the employees want their company to succeed and are willing to work with it. So this is a very good sign. Additionally, for company communication, due to the hierarchical structure of TransNamib, we found that communications from top to bottom tend to get stuck in the organizational rungs of the ladder, so to speak. And communication from the bottom to up rarely make it to the top. They get stuck somewhere in the middle. However, within the same department or horizontal communications, it's good. Across departments, not so much, but within the same department, the people know each other, so casual conversation will pass on communications. Then when it comes to passengers, as we were riding the trains, we found that there were no announcements and no signs that told us what was happening, so there was no way to know train arrival time, train departure time, delays, etc. Additionally, from the train attendant, there was minimal communication as well.
After collecting all this data, speaking to all these people, and having our experiences at TransNamib, we compiled, in total, 7 recommendations, 4 of which are intercompany recommendations, which we'll get into now, and 3 of which are passenger recommendations. The first observation that we had for our company recommendation was that employees are really interested in having executives come down to the ground level and facilitate relationships between executives and ground level employees. When we spoke to most employees, they were really interested in this. They said they'd seen executives come down to the ground level before, but not to do more than shake hands and say hello on a very short amount of time. So they want executives to come down to meet with them and to have their voices heard. So our recommendation is to have executives regularly visit ground level employees, talk to everyone, make sure everyone knows that they are part of the company and they are valued, which will raise morale and greatly improve communication as a whole.
So our second recommendation is to make company documents accessible and to have them in multiple languages. As we were going about and interviewing ground level employees, we found that many of them are not native English speakers. In addition to that, we found that many of the employees couldn't access vital company communications, such as the weekly news bulletin or their company rights. So, in order to remedy this, we suggest having company communications present in multiple languages, such as Afrikaans, Oshiwambo, and any other prevalent mother tongues. In addition, we strongly recommend making sure that the communications are available, and perhaps setting up a system of checks and balances to ensure that the employees can access vital company communications.
Our third intercompany recommendation is for TransNamib to host company-wide social events. So we observed 2 things that led us to this. The first being that some departments would have their own social events within themselves. For example, finance does a bride about every quarter, the marketing department and sales department work on practice together, and they reported that this would give them a sort of sense of community and friendship, and that they weren't just coworkers, but they were also friends. And like Natasha alluded to a lot earlier, there's difficulty in horizontal communication in people in different departments. Someone in operations and someone in engineering might not always communicate as well as they do. So therefore, our recommendation is to have company-wide social events where people get to relax, have some fun, enjoy themselves, but also forge these friendships and connections that they can use in the future across departments, so that if someone in properties is trying to talk to someone in finance, they have this common thread of friendship that can help them work together better.
So our fourth recommendation, for the company recommendations, is to increase the amount of training opportunities available at TransNamib. So we learned that between 2012 and 2014, many of the training opportunities at TransNamib were cut. These included all sorts of things from firefighting to English literacy, and also included other topics such as forklift driving, heavy machinery operation, and training. Through our research, we also found that many third-party training opportunities that are given to TransNamib are not adequately communicated to the employees who would benefit from it. Therefore, our recommendation is to increase the amount of training opportunities. First of all, we would like to see at least English literacy and communication, as has been suggested by the marketing department. These would greatly increase the amount of human capital at TransNamib. It would build the human capital and could provide an additional revenue stream if it was offered to the public. In addition, we recommend that TransNamib communicates all third-party training opportunities to their entire company.
That concludes our intercompany recommendations. So now we'll move on to our passenger recommendations. The first observation that we had on the train was that there was a lot of frustration among the passengers that they didn't know the status of their train. So whether it had arrived, if there was a delay, a breakdown, things like that. And we also noticed that most Namibians have at least a rudimentary cell phone that can receive SMS messages or text messages. So to remedy this problem, we recommend that TransNamib have an SMS alert system to alert ticketed passengers of when trains have arrived, if they're delayed, if there's a breakdown, a cancellation, anything like that, so people aren't waiting around for the train and getting frustrated, which leads to less revenue because less people will ride the trains. Also, we noticed when we rode the trains that some of the platforms are fairly unsafe. We went to the Swakopmund platform where there's no roof, there's no lights, and it's very isolated. And when we were there, it was nighttime, so it was dark, it was raining, so we were getting wet, and we were all alone and there was no one around, which felt really unsafe to us and unsettling. And if there was this SMS system, people could stay in places where they feel safe and places where there are lights and food, and wait until their train got there and know exactly where to be at the platform.
So in addition to having the SMS system, we also recommend having updatable signage, such as chalkboards and whiteboards. And these signs would be updated by train attendants or other TransNamib employees, and they would include updates of the train status. And this is once again because there's currently no system of signs or announcements that tell passengers what's happening to their trains. So we recommend putting these signs in every train car and on every platform. So that way the passengers who don't have cell phones, or even those who do, are able to walk outside, look at the board, and say, oh, this is when my train is coming. This is when my platform is coming. I can budget this much time to sleep, when to wake up. This is the reason why my train is stopped, and other such things.
Our third and final passenger recommendation is to encourage managers and executives to ride the trains frequently. As we mentioned at the beginning, about 90% of TransNamib's revenue comes from freight. They really care about freight. They're a freight-focused company, but they still have this passenger service. And when managers and executives are making their decisions for the company, they often do it with freight in mind. We noticed that when we spoke to managers and executives, we would often ask if they'd ever ridden a train, to which they would tend to laugh at us. And we noticed in the train, some of the problems that we encountered, simple fixes, like our first two recommendations. And therefore, we recommend strongly that managers and executives ride the trains at least once per quarter. They're traveling around the country anyway for TransNamib business. This would force them to see the problems that the trains have, see the issues that the normal passengers face. And since they'd be continuing this not once but once a quarter, when they made decisions or recommendations for the passenger service, it would ensure that they were actually carried out. And if they weren't, the next time the executive rides the train, they would notice and they could act accordingly.
So there's just a few people we'd like to thank. There's actually a lot of people, but we'd like to thank a lot of people during our time here in Namibia. The first one is our project sponsor, Michael Feldman, which is currently on holiday in America. We'd like to thank everyone that helped us by participating in our survey and our data collection. The data we gathered was very valuable. We'd like to thank Eileen, who's here tonight. Thank you for being across the hall and always being a resource to us. Whenever we needed help, you were there for us. We'd like to thank the CEO of TransNamib, Johnny Smith, and Expo, the executives, for taking time out of their very busy schedules to meet with us. We'd like to thank all the other students and colleagues that have helped us with feedback and just being awesome people. We'd like to thank our sponsoring institution, Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and our two advisors. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out. Any questions?
Just get back to your culture metrics 4x4.
Yep.
Is there correlation between these different cultures and national performance or effectiveness?
So one of the things that we did some research on before we got here was this company culture, and we could see companies that excel sort of regardless of their culture. So we looked at like the military, for example, which has a very hierarchical culture, but it gets done what it needs to essentially. And you can look at other companies that seem strongly developmental. So that's why we talk about like a balanced culture or being strong in one area or another.